friends, happy fall. I am so excited to be sitting down doing our yearly fall recommendation video. I love doing this video every year. It's definitely a video I look forward to, mainly because I get to bring new books to the table that I've read since our last fall recommendation video. So as you can see around me, I'm literally surrounded by books right now. I have so many fall book recommendations for you today, and I do have them sectioned off into different categories. Our biggest pile is obviously fantasy, because I feel like when it comes to fall reading, fantasy books are just the best. We have a few romances in here, and then I think I have one or two mysteries in here. I don't really read a lot of mystery thriller books, but those are obviously another really popular genre to read during the fall time. And then right here we have my fall TBR, which is also going to be included in today's video. These are all the books that I want to read during this fall season, and they're all books that I've kind of been waiting for the fall to actually pick up, because a lot of them are fall themed, a lot of them take place in the fall, or they just give off those cozy fall vibes. I'm actually gonna move it a little bit just because I'm scared it's going to fall and explode everywhere. We have a lot of really fun books to go through today, but before we hop into it, I just want to tell you guys about my book club that I run over on the app Fable. If you guys don't know what Fable is, if you've never heard of it before, it's basically the app for book lovers. If you're a book lover and you don't have Fable, you need Fable in your life, guys. It's basically a social media for book lovers. You can create book clubs on there, but you can also leave book reviews, chat with other members about books, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm actually doing a very fun and exciting little giveaway though to my entire club. So if you join my book club, you'll be able to get a free ebook. Hinge, in partnership with Days, just released a whole book of short stories called No Ordinary Love, an anthology of love stories almost never told. What I love about these short stories as well is that they're not your typical fairy tales. They're messy, real, beautiful tales about finding love on Hinge, and they really showcase modern romance as being perfect because they're perfectly real. My favorite story out of this is You Again by John Paul Brammer. This is all about John and Maura and basically how they get a second chance at love. They end up matching together on Hinge in January of 2023, and then they end up calling off the date, and then as the next few months kind of go by, they end up growing, finding themselves, and then in May of 2023 they both decide to give Hinge a shot again, and they rematch with one another. The first thing that Maura says to John is "you again," and they end up going on a date and really connecting and having fun. No Ordinary Love though is a series of short real fiction pieces that come together in a unique novella that really bring life to all the plot twists when it comes to modern romance. There's a total of 6 love stories in this anthology, and we are going to be reading it together in my Fable book club. In order to get your free ebook, you just have to make sure you're a part of my Fable club. If you're not, you'll be able to sign up using the link in my description, and then following that, in order to receive your ebook, you'll just have to comment in our kickoff room and it will be added to your shelf. I'll have all the details linked in my description. Make sure to check it out, join the club, it's completely free, and you get a free book. With all that being said though, we are gonna jump right into my fall recommendation video. We're gonna start with fall recs, and then we'll jump in to my fall TBR. I have a ton of really fun fall books to share with you guys today, and for the most part I try to keep them different from last year's fall rec video. I try to change it up every year because they do get kind of repetitive, and I feel like a lot of people will just share the same books over and over again. I try to put some newer ones in here, but for the most part these are like my favorite books that I think are perfect for the fall time. Starting off, we have Assistant to the Villain and Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I love these books, guys. I just read Apprentice to the Villain recently. If you keep up with my reading vlogs, you probably already know my feelings about this book and how much I loved it. These are such fun, laugh out loud type of fantasy books. They give off fairy tale vibes, but in a reversed aspect, just because one of our main characters actually happens to be the villain, while everyone in the kingdom is absolutely terrified of him. He's ruthless, he does horrible things. Our FMC in the series, Evie, is not afraid of him one bit. She actually doesn't put up with any of his shenanigans and will often sass him back when he's getting on her nerves, which I absolutely love. These books are literally laugh out loud type of funny. There's so many jokes that are cracked throughout these books where I was like rolling on the ground, kicking my feet, giggling. Book 2 is actually one of my most annotated books I think I've ever done. I was literally highlighting and annotating almost every single page of this book. But starting from book 1, our FMC is named Evie, and basically there's like this illness going around in the kingdom, and Evie isn't sick, but she knows people that are sick, so she is on the hunt to find work so she's able to provide for her family. There's a lot of backstory to Evie and what she was doing previously for work that you kind of learn about throughout the story, but basically she's having a really hard time finding work, finding a new job, and one day she happens to be in the wrong place at the right time, which many would think she was in the right place at the wrong time, but she was actually in the wrong place at the right time, and she fell right into the hands, literally. She fell into the hands of our villain, who again is absolutely terrifying. He's ruthless. He does horrible things. He is the villain. But Evie is not one to shy away from things and shy away from challenge. So when the villain offers her a proposition to become his assistant, she immediately jumps on it and starts her work as his assistant. And throughout this whole book, we're just kind of watching Evie bring this type of light and happiness to the work environment, because everyone who's working for the villain is also kind of scared of him and just very quiet to themselves. But when Evie comes in, she kind of brings this happiness, laughter, type of joy to the work environment, and obviously the villain gets very frustrated because he wants everyone to be miserable. So we have our assistant to the villain, and throughout the whole story we're also just watching Evie kind of crack at the villain and his whole front, because although he comes off as the scariest, most brutal, ruthless villain there is, you slowly figure out that he has a lot of soft spots, especially for Evie. There's so much great banter in these books. There's so much good tension. All the side characters, the magic, the potions, everything else that are in these books as well is just amazing. Book 1 is a mega slow burn. The entire book I was just waiting for something to happen. Book 2 is when you get the fun, the action, the adventure. Everything I was hoping for in book 1 I got in book 2, and I absolutely loved it so much. But the series is absolutely amazing. Book 3 comes out next year, and I could not recommend these books enough. I think they are amazing fantasy books. If you like books that really make you laugh, these are definitely it. Once you start these, you will not want to put them down. Next up we have the Belladonna trilogy by Adeline Grace. I am obsessed with these books. I read this whole series this year, and I can't believe it took me so long to pick up book 1, which is Belladonna. This book is amazing. It's another book I rave about a lot on my channel, so if you've seen previous videos, you've probably heard me talk about Belladonna, but this is basically a gothic romantasy, and our main character Signa, everywhere she goes, death seems to follow her. What's really fun about these books is that Death is a real character, and he is someone that Signa engages with throughout the story. She absolutely despises him. We get an awesome and epic enemies to lovers in here. The fact that we're reading about someone interacting with Death himself is so crazy, but so fascinating to me. Signa's also able to communicate with ghosts, so we get a little bit of a paranormal aspect in here. And then along with that, we also get a really fun murder mystery in here, and we get a murder mystery in book 1 and book 2. Signa is always searching for mysteries. She loves figuring things out, and that's exactly what she does in book 1 and book 2. We get an awesome enemies to lovers in here, as well as an incredible forbidden love romance. Because these are gothic romantasies, I just feel like they're perfect for fall, because you get those gothic vibes. You get that like dark, cozy vibe that we kind of all crave during the fall time. These are absolutely amazing. And then book 3 is Wisteria. Wisteria will really do it for you. This is beautiful. It's a beautiful end to a beautiful trilogy. You do follow the story of different characters in book 3, but wow, the way that all these books kind of tie together is absolutely beautiful. It's one of my favorite series of 2024, and the vibes are immaculate, especially during the fall time. Next up, we have one of my favorite authors for the fall time, which happens to be Miss Stephanie Garber. She is the author of the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, as well as the Caraval trilogy, and these books, you guys already know. I feel like these are very popular books, very popular book talky type of books, but I wanted to include these mainly because they are some of my favorite books, and she is definitely one of my favorite authors. So if you haven't read her books before and you're looking for a time to get into them, I would definitely recommend picking them up during the fall time, because they give off those cozy, magical vibes. I just feel like that's perfect for the fall time. If you're gonna pick up her books this fall though, start with the Caraval trilogy. They take place before the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and our MMC see from Once Upon a Broken Heart is actually mentioned in these books, and you kind of get a little bit of a backstory on him and a few other characters. But these books are absolutely so much fun. They tell the stories of two sisters. In book one, our main character is Scarlet, and her lifelong dream has always been to be invited to the game of Caraval. She finally gets her invitation, and when her and her sister arrive, her sister Tella ends up going missing. So Scarlet ends up playing the game of Caraval in order to find her sister. Book two is legendary and it is told from Tella's point of view, which is so fun because book one was all about Scarlet. We finally get down to Tella's story, and I honestly loved her story so much because you really dive more into the background of their family and their mother and their history. So there's so many crazy plot twists and things that happen in this. And then book three, which is finale, kind of ties everything together. We get an incredible romance in these books. We get one with Scarlet and Donatella. Donatella's romance is so fun and so crazy because it's a love triangle. The action, the adventure, the romances in here are absolutely incredible. Also, the love you read between two sisters I think is just so beautiful. So much fun and so cozy for the fall time. And then following Caraval, you can then jump in to the best books. In my opinion, these are probably some of my favorite fantasy books. We have the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I am obsessed with these books. I think about them nonstop. I honestly have not stopped thinking about them, and it's been almost a year since I've read them. So these books follow the story of a girl named Evangeline Fox, and in book one, she basically is freaking out because her one true love is marrying someone else. So she decides to strike a deal with the fate, which is absolutely, like, by no means the last resort isn't even striking a deal with fate. Everyone says not to make a deal with the fate because they will twist it, they will turn it, and it just won't work out the way that you want it to. And she decides to strike a deal with the Prince of Heart, which is Jax. Wow, wow, wow. The Prince of Hearts will have you contemplating everything in life. In all seriousness though, these books are absolutely incredible. The romance you get in here is so beautiful. I do prefer these over the Caraval series, and I am just forever in love with these characters. I think the whole storyline, the plot twist, the betrayal we get, the betrayal you get in these books is heart-wrenching, but it's worth every second, especially once you get to the last book in the series. The way that Stephanie Garber writes the last book, you're kind of jumping between different characters and stuff like that, and I really loved it. Lots of fun, lots of magic, there's vampires. You can't go wrong with that. Next up, we have the Shatter Me series. This isn't really fantasy, it's more so dystopian, and this is obviously a very popular, well-known series, but again, it is one of my favorite series. I talk about it very often on my channel, so I feel like it was very fitting for me to just include it in this video. But if you haven't read these before, please do this fall because these books are just, they're amazing. They're the best. If you love dystopian stories, romances, adventures, this is probably one of my favorites I've ever read before. This is actually a series I would do anything to see it turned into a movie or show. I feel like we're kind of past the time of dystopian movies and shows. This series would have been a masterpiece on the big screen. I just know it. This is a 6-book series along with a ton of novellas kind of intertwining. Book one is Shatter Me, and it's the only book I'm really going to cover just because if I covered every book, I would for sure spoil everything in the series. Book one tells the story of Juliet, and she is the main character of this entire series. Basically, Juliet's touch is lethal. If she touches someone, she ultimately kills them, which is absolutely terrifying. She doesn't mean to. She doesn't want to harm anybody. She's like the most innocent and fragile person, honestly. She just doesn't know how to control her power. So she does end up getting locked away because everybody is absolutely terrified of her, and this is also taking place in a dystopian world. We have the reestablishment that is basically in charge of all these different sectors in the world. They're basically making the world worse for everybody. So along with that, we also have a rebellion that is trying to fight back and make the world a better place. Politics of the world though, the reestablishment, the rebellion, that kind of comes into play towards the end of this book and more so into book two. Book one is mainly just setting up our story, our main character Juliet, and it's showcasing how small she feels and how little she thinks of herself. And what I really love about this series is the character development we get it, you really watch her grow into someone so much stronger and more confident, and I honestly love it. Of course, there is an amazing romance in here. There's a love triangle in here. There's an enemies to lovers. There's a friends to lovers. There's so much craziness that happens just within the romance. The dystopian vibes, I think, just pairs so well with the fall time. I could not recommend this series enough. If you haven't read it before, I actually have a whole video talking about every book and kind of going through the series. If you haven't read Shatter Me, definitely go check that video out because it really is one of the coolest series I think I have ever read. Next up, we have the Cruel Prince trilogy. I've only read book 1 and book 2. Book 3 and the novella is actually on my TBR for fall, but these books are probably very recommended during the fall time because the fall vibes are immaculate, guys. They do be vibing in this series. The Cruel Prince is such a roller coaster in my opinion. Our main character is Jude, and basically when she's very young, her parents are both killed, and her sisters are basically taken by the fairy that killed her parents, and they're taken away to a totally new world and they're raised there. As Jude and her sisters grow up though, they struggle a lot because fairies absolutely despise humans. They think they're dumb, they think they're useless, and just honestly the worst thing to exist basically. Jude struggles a lot growing up in the world of fairies, and she has many encounters with the prince, who is Cardan. He would be our cruel prince basically because he is quite cruel, and we do get an enemies to lovers between the two of them. Something I always say when I'm talking about these books is that the enemies to lovers we get in them, I've never read a book where two characters despise each other so much. So if you are looking for an actual enemies to lovers where the characters despise each other the entire time, these books are definitely for you because they absolutely hate each other. The romance in the series though is more so a subplot, especially in book 1. You're mostly just getting the setup of the world, the characters, the politics. Everyone talks about how they love the politics of this series and of this world. I think Holly Black does a great job at creating such magical and beautiful worlds for us to kind of go into. Her books are very descriptive and cozy. When I was reading them, I felt like I was really in the pages. If you like a lot of magic and action and betrayal, if you like when romance isn't the main point of it, I would definitely recommend these. We're jumping into some very popular book talk books. I know, bear with me. These are just some of my favorite books personally, and I have loved them since I read them. First up, we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I also have book 2 here, which is Reckless. A lot of people didn't like book 2. I personally loved it. It was incredible and I wouldn't change a thing about it, but book 1 is Powerless, and I love this book especially for the fall time because it gives off Hunger Game vibes. I actually read this book last fall and it was such a beautiful, lovely experience. I loved every second of this book. I wanted to include it in this video just because it is a book I read during the fall time. I thought the vibes were on point. I love the Hunger Game aspect to this. The slow burn we get in here. Could we just talk about how slow burns hit better in the fall? I don't know why. I just personally love slow burn romances in the fall time. I think there's just something so cozy and beautiful about it. There's an incredible slow burn in here. The action and adventure. If you've never heard of it before, if you've never read it, they basically follow the story of a girl named Peyton, and in a world of people who have power, she is powerless. What's really scary about this is that the kingdom is killing off people who don't have powers. So Peyton is basically hiding in plain sight, trying to get by, trying to kind of sneak under these people who are hunting her. There's these purging trials that take place in the kingdom though, where the best of the best basically compete, and at the end of the day, the person who wins becomes the enforcer, who is basically the second-hand person to the king. Literally the strongest and best of the best are competing in these trials, and unfortunately for Peyton, she gets nominated into them after saving one of the princes, and everything from that point on changes everything for her. She's now living in the kingdom, competing in these trials against people who have incredible power. She's attending these balls and dinners, and it's just such an epic adventure. It's a fun story. It is easily one of my favorite fantasy books I have ever read. If you haven't read this before, take this as your sign to pick it up and give it a chance. Next up, we have Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, another very popular series from last year. It's another book that popped off, I think, right before Powerless. They both popped off around the same time, I think. These books are absolutely beautiful. I would say that these are more on the serious and emotional side. In book one, I sobbed. There were just so many emotional moments throughout the story that had my heart breaking, and I love books that really bring emotion out of me. I find that it's very rare for a book to pull emotion out of me, so when I find a book that does, I hang on tight and talk about it as much as I can. So that's exactly what Divine Rivals did for me. Our FMC in this is Iris and our MMC is Roman. They are basically competing for the same spot at their local paper. Kind of sparks up this little enemies or rivals relationship between the two of them, and in between it all, Roman is coming from a very wealthy, rich family. He's kind of getting pushed into an arranged marriage at the time, where Iris is coming from a very hard at-home life. Her older brother took off to fight in the war that is happening between the gods, and her mother is struggling with an addiction. Iris actually ends up dropping out of school to work at the Gazette in order to provide for her mother. Her whole backstory and at-home life is just so heartbreaking, and I sobbed so much reading a lot of the chapters about it. There's some sad stuff in book one, but there's also such beautiful moments. I don't want to spoil these incredible books for you, but these are beautiful, emotional, magical reads. The war between gods is so fascinating. The politics between the two of them is really cool. I think it's so fun that our two main characters are both writers. They both actually have magical typewriters that were handed down from their grandparents, and they find that they're able to communicate with one another through their typewriters. That whole part of the story is so fun and beautiful in its own, so highly recommend these books if you haven't read them. I'm sure you have because they are very popular, but if you haven't, this is your sign. Next up we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is another book I read during the fall time last year. Wow, wow, wow. If you love dragons and you love action and adventure, this book is so good. I'm not going to go too much into detail about it because again, it is a really popular book talky book, but the one thing I will say is I loved this book so much because a lot of it revolved around dragons and dragon riding, and for me that is just so much fun. I grew up loving Aragon, I grew up loving Harry Potter, so whenever I get a fantasy book that has dragons involved, I'm 99% of the time probably going to love it. The whole storyline of this book though is super fun. Our main character is Violet. She basically is training her whole life to enter the scribe quadrant, where she will just write and study and read. She ends up being thrown in to the dragon riders. She basically has to compete and train in all these really high stake trials. The romance in it is obviously amazing. We get a little bit of an enemies to lovers in there. Again, the politics of that world is also really fascinating because her mother is like in charge of everybody, so it's crazy that she would send her daughter into something so dangerous. And again, there's just a lot of secrets and betrayal and just crazy things that happen. But love that book though, even though it's a super hyped up book talk one. Next we have Lightlark by Alex Astor. This I recently read with my book club and it was so much fun. I can't believe it took me so long to pick this book up. What I loved about this book the most is that there's 6 different realms and 6 different types of powers. I just love when we get a variety of different powers and magic in books. Our main character is Isla Crown. She is the ruler of the Wildling realm. In the beginning of the book, it actually gives you a whole list of the realms as well as their curses. And basically what happened a super long time ago, there was a curse placed on all the realms, and now every 100 years the rulers of each realm come together and try to break this curse. But there is a catch to it where one ruler has to die in the end, so they've been unsuccessful with breaking the curses. This is Isla's first time competing and she is hiding a very big secret. She's kind of hiding in plain sight. She's competing in these trials, trying to blend in, trying to prove that her realm is worth saving. This is a really fun read because there's just a lot of crazy plot twists in here that I didn't see coming. And again, I just like all the different types of magic and powers that are kind of showcased in here. Romance wise, this is so fun. There's a love triangle in here, and one of my favorite characters in this book is our Morley Gray Nightshade. The things he does for Isla. This is a book that really got me and I didn't think it was gonna get me. Next up we have Heartless Hunter. This is perfect for the fall time because it gives off all those witchy vibes, and it's actually about a witch who is being hunted by a witch hunter. Our main character is Rune, and she's living in a world where witches aren't accepted anymore because in the past they just created so much chaos. People began hunting them, killing them off, and now Rune is living in a world where witches are not accepted, but she's a witch. Are you noticing a common theme here with a lot of my books? So she's a witch living in a world where witches are not accepted, and our MMC is Gideon. He is like the ultimate witch hunter, the top dog. And the crazy thing about their story is that Rune is hiding in plain sight. She's a part of high society. She attends balls and all these gatherings. No one would ever suspect that she's a witch, basically. Aside from her high society life though, she also disguises herself as a vigilante where she goes out and tries to save witches. A part of her master plan is to fake court Gideon into figuring out where he's hiding all the witches that he captures. That's basically our main plot of the story. They're fake courting each other because she wants to know his secrets, but Gideon is also becoming suspicious of Rune. Such a fun read for the fall time though, because you get those witchy vibes. Next up we have A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This is so perfect for the fall time, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's a dark academia read. Dark academia in the fall time, it just goes together, you know? The vibes are just immaculate. So this is such a crazy roller coaster because there are so many plot twists in here. Literally keeps you on your toes the entire time. Our main character in this book is Effie, and one of her favorite authors recently passed away, and she's given the opportunity to basically go to his manor and help redesign it because she's in architect school. And then our MMC in this is Preston. He is a literary student, and he also is given the opportunity to go to the manor and basically do a write-up on the late author. While the two of them are at the manor though, they definitely develop a rival type of relationship. They end up discovering a lot of crazy secrets, a lot of crazy stories. This is a really fun read though, with lots of plot twists, lots of mystery and puzzles. And the romance in here, although more of a subplot, it's a very slow burn, and I think the way that Ava Reid kind of writes the romance is just, I think the best way I can explain it is she wrote the romance in a very gentle and soft type of manner. I feel like that doesn't make sense, but in my head it makes sense. We're now moving on to our next category, which is dark romance. For me personally, I love reading dark romance in the fall time. I feel like there's something so cozy to it. I have two dark romance series to share with you today, and they are just perfect for the fall time if you're looking for a good dark romance. First up, we have the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark. These books are so crazy and so fun. If you've never heard of this series before, it basically revolves around two high-up mafia families. We have the Gallows, which is the Italian mafia, and then we have the Griffins, which is the Irish mafia. And then every book in the series is about one of the kids or siblings finding love. They are quite crazy, they can be quite dark, but in my opinion, I do feel like these are on the lighter side of dark romance just because I recently picked up Haunting Adeline, and yeah, these books are really good if you want to jump into dark romance. If you're just starting out, I think they are perfect for you. Obviously, there's dark and twisted things covered in them, but definitely on the lighter side. Next up, we have the Never After novels by Emily McIntyre. You guys have probably heard me talk about these so much on my channel, but I haven't talked about them in a hot minute. I am absolutely obsessed with these. If you've never heard of them before, these are basically reimaginings of our favorite classic movies. A lot of them pay homage to Disney movies. That's what originally drew me to them. Book one is Hooked, and it's a reimagining of Peter Pan. What's really cool about these books is that the main characters are the villains. So in Hooked, our main character is James Hook, and I remember going into this thinking, there's no way I'm going to like this guy. There's no way, because no one likes Captain Hook. I fell in love with James Hook in this book, and it is so twisted, it's so messed up, but they're so fun and they're amazing. I just love the action we get in them. Book two is Scarred and pays a lot of homage to The Lion King. Our main character is Tristan, who is based off of Scar. I loved this one so much just because there's kings and queens, there's princes and princesses. I love that fairy tale aspect when it comes to books. Wretched pays homage to The Wizard of Oz. It was my least favorite book out of the series, but I thought it was really cool looking for the little Easter eggs in here that were kind of going back to The Wizard of Oz. Book four is Twisted, and this is a reimagining of Aladdin. Our main characters in this is Yasmin and Julian, who are loosely based off of Jasmine and Jafar. wow, that's all I can say about this. And then the 5th book that came out last year is Cross. This is a reimagining of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I loved this book so much more than I thought I would. I didn't think I was gonna like it because that's never been one of my like top favorite movies, but this one is probably my favorite book out of the entire series. Our last little section of my fall book recs is romance, and I do have a few romance books in here that I just feel like are perfect for the fall time, perfect for cozy season. Starting off, we have The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is just a cute little hockey romance. It's a very popular book talk book, so again, it's probably one you've heard of. This is by far one of my favorite hockey romances I have ever read. Aside from the amazing romance we get in here, I think the sensitive topics that are kind of covered, the way that Elle Kennedy wrote about them was just really beautiful, and the way she kind of talks about them and brings them to light, I just think she did such a wonderful job. Aside from that, this is just a cute, silly little hockey romance. Our main characters are Hannah and Garrett. Garrett is failing a class, or he's not doing well in one of the classes that Hannah is actually doing amazing in. They end up coming up with a tutoring arrangement where she'll help him pass the class in exchange for him to help her kind of get the guy she likes, but in the middle of it all, they end up catching feelings for one another. This is one of my favorite hockey romances. I think it is just so adorable. It's fluffy and cute. Next up, we have Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is a book I feel like everyone talks about every fall time because the vibes in here are just so cozy and so sweet. This is a second chance romance between Macy and Elliot, and it actually jumps between different time periods. We go between when they were really young, getting to know each other, falling in love for the first time, and then we jump to the present time where they're kind of getting to know each other again. Elliot's trying to figure out why Macy ghosted him for like 10-11 years. It's quite a crazy emotional roller coaster, but it is perfect for the fall time because it gives off all the cozy vibes, and because it's a second chance romance as well as a first love romance, I just think there's something so cozy and warm about it. Next up, we have Icebreaker and Daydream by Hannah Grace. These are more cutie little hockey romances, and I mainly recommend hockey romances during the fall time because it's when hockey season is starting up again. These books specifically take place in a college setting during the fall time, during hockey season, and I feel like the vibes overall are just really cozy and sweet. These are definitely fluffy type of romances. There's not crazy plot twists or intense storylines to them, but if you're looking for cute, fluffy, easy reads for the fall, I would definitely recommend Hannah Grace because her writing style is also just super easygoing, fast-paced. I think she writes incredible romances, especially if you don't like all the drama. These are perfect for you. Next up, we have Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is a book I will not shut up about, probably ever. Perfect for the fall time. It's a rugby romance. It takes place during the school time. It takes place in Ireland. Cozy vibes. It's such a beautiful, emotional type of read. Definitely don't recommend it if you don't want to cry, but if you're looking for a really well-written, beautiful storyline, I could not recommend this enough. I'm not going to talk too much about it just because I talk a lot about that book. Next up, we have the Twisted series. This is a very popular series. For me personally, I absolutely love it. I do have a whole video talking about this series and why you should read it, so I won't spend too much time on it, but basically this is a series of interconnected standalones, and in this universe there's 4 girls who are best friends in college, and each book is basically about each girl finding love. Although we get a lot of twisted, crazy things that happen in these books, the romances are incredible. I love every couple, and I also love how they all kind of intertwine with one another. I have a whole video on this series. Definitely check that out if you want to learn more about them. I feel like book 1, which is Twisted Love, and book 2, which is Twisted Games, are perfect for the fall time in my opinion, just because the vibes are really there. In book 1, our FMC is still actively in school, and then in book 2, our FMC is actually a princess and she falls in love with her bodyguard, and I don't know what it is about that trope, but I ate it up and I loved it. I did read those books during the fall time, so that could also be why I prefer them during the fall time. Next up, we have Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. This is an adorable friends to lovers story. Our FMC in this book studies abroad for a semester in Paris, and while she's there, we kind of watch her make all these new friends, as well as our MMC, who is from England, and they kind of spark out this cutie little friends to lovers relationship. The found family in here is absolutely adorable. The slow burn is incredible, and overall what I really enjoyed about this book is just the friendship we kind of get between all of the characters. I just thought it was so adorable. You're also frolicking around the streets of Paris in this book. It's so cozy and sweet and lovey-dovey. My last fall book rec for you guys is Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and I'm sure it is so easy to assume why I would include this book in a fall recommendation video. Vampires and werewolves, guys. That basically makes a fall time for me. In all seriousness though, this was so much fun. You guys know I'm a big Ali Hazelwood fan. I literally eat up anything that woman puts out into the world. This was such a fun book though. If you like Twilight, if you like Teen Wolf, if you like Supernatural, you will absolutely love this book. There's an arranged marriage in here. There's a slight enemies to lovers in here, as well as a fated mates trope. I loved every second of this because we're getting a vampire and a werewolf. They're getting thrown together even though they absolutely despise their kind, and throughout the whole story we're watching them grow closer to one another, but we're also kind of watching them team up together. Misery and Lowe's relationship in this story though is so sweet. It's so amazing. Watching their love kind of unfold throughout the story is absolutely beautiful, and the scenes that we get, so good. Okay, we are back. I took a little break. I went and ate some dinner, watched some football, and now we're gonna jump in to my fall TBR. I have a pretty hefty fall TBR, but these are just books that I've kind of been putting off, waiting for the fall time. They give off fall vibes. We have this big pile of books that are on my fall TBR, but we also have a list of books that are coming out this fall I am very, very excited for. First up, we have Skyshade by Alex Astor. This is book 3 in the Lightlark series, and I actually have book 2, which is Nightbane, on my fall TBR. Nightshade is also on my TBR though, just because knowing how Lightlark ended, I kind of have an idea of how Nightbane is gonna go, and I'm going to want to jump into Nightshade right after. So then we have Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. I'm obsessed with this series right now. I believe it's book 3 in the Rebel Blue Ranch novels. This is actually a really anticipated release for me though, because I read book 1 and book 2 in the beginning of this year. Absolutely loved those books. They are just feel good, easygoing, small town cowboy romances, and you guys know I devour those. I love those. I love my cowboy romances. So Lost and Lassoed is book 3. That's coming out in November, and I am so excited for that book specifically because it's an enemies to lovers, and we kind of get little glimpses into our two main characters throughout book 1 and book 2. And I have just been waiting for their story, for their book. I was hoping so badly that book 3 was going to be about them, and when I saw it was, I got so excited. I just loved their characters individually throughout book 1 and book 2, but when they're together, the banter we were getting in the small moments of them in book 1 and book 2 was just so good, and I love when a book has really good banter. Very excited for Lost and Lassoed. The enemies to lovers vibes is gonna be amazing. Next up, we have Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is actually coming out very soon. It's coming out in October, and it's the follow-up to Better Than the Movies. You've probably read it or heard about it at this point. I'm so excited for the sequel though, because it's basically the aftermath of book 1. We're following our two main characters to college. We're seeing how life changes, how their relationship changes. It's gonna be amazing. I have no doubt in my mind that I'm gonna love it. I loved Better Than the Movies. I thought that was such a beautifully written and well done book. Next up, we have Impractical Magic, and this is perfect for fans of the Gilmore Girls and Charmed. I am so excited for this book because it's giving off all those witchy vibes that we love when it comes to fall. In Oakhaven, this witch is about to brew up more trouble than she bargained for. It's a Grumpy Meets Sunshine, slow burn, witchy aesthetic, and cozy small town romance. Those are all perfect for the fall time though, and I just know this book is gonna be amazing. And then the last two books I have on this list that I don't have yet, but I have heard incredible things about, it's kind of like all the talk right now in the book community, is the Pumpkin Spice Cafe and the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore. Could we just take a moment to look at these covers? They radiate fall, guys. I need these books in my life. I need these books this fall season. Could we just talk about this author's name? What the heck? Love it, here for it, living for it. These two books are at the top of my fall TBR though, mainly because they are the books of the fall time, and I feel like they're going to be such cozy, cutesy little reads. Diving right into my physical books, we have a lot here. Starting off, I have Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice. This is just a cutie little fall book I picked up from Barnes a few weeks ago. I feel like this is going to be the perfect little starter book into fall. It's a cutie little YA book about two rival coffee shops who can make the best pumpkin spice iced latte. So cheesy. I'm here for it and I am sold. Next up we have Deadly Occupants by Mads Rafferty. I am so excited for this because it's kind of a play off of Pretty Little Liars. It's like Pretty Little Liars meets Riverdale. I need to read this book this fall. I feel like I'm going to be obsessed with it. I love Pretty Little Liars. I love, love, love Riverdale. So this is also really high on my TBR. It's giving off all the spooky vibes and I am actually here for it. Next up I have The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I have always wanted to read a football romance. I never have, which is absolutely crazy, and I feel like the fall time is the perfect time to read football romances because it's football season. I decided on The Cheat Sheet though because it's a super easygoing, short little romance. A lot of the football romances I have in my library right now are super long. I'm talking like 600-700 pages, so I feel like this is going to be a good little starter book. Next up we have Lady Macbeth by Ava Reed. If you remember, Ava Reed is also the author of A Study in Drowning, which is from the first part of this video. This is her newest release, and Lady Macbeth is actually based off a villain created by Shakespeare. So I'm sure you can imagine how excited I am for this book. It's another one that's very high up on my TBR for the fall season. The lady knows the stories how her eyes induce madness in men. The lady knows she will be wed to the Scottish brute who does not leave his warrior ways behind when he comes to the marriage bed. The lady knows his hostile, suspicious court will be a game of strategy, requiring all of her wiles and hidden witchcraft to survive. But her lady does not know her husband has occult secrets of his own. She does not know that prophecy girds him like armor. She does not know that her magic is greater and more dangerous and that it will threaten the order of the world. She does not know this yet, but she will. Next up we have The Cheerleaders and the Champions by Kara Thomas. These are two itty bitty mystery thriller books that I was recently sent, and I am so excited about these. I feel like they're going to be perfect for the fall season, but I also think they're perfect for jumping into the mystery thriller genre because it's not a genre I really go near very often. So I'm very excited to try these books out. If I was judging books by their covers, I love these. I think they are so cute and aesthetic and minimalistic. Mysteries and thrillers are definitely books I really want to try and get into this fall season because I feel like it'd be a lot of fun. Following that though, we also have the reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This is a newer release and I'm very excited about this because a lot of people had said really, really good things about it, and I did very much enjoy A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, so I feel like this could be a really fun book to read. Next up we have Half-Blood by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and this is a book I've actually talked a lot about recently. I don't know why, but I keep talking about this book, so here we are again. This is on my fall TBR because it's kind of like a witchy romance, and witchy romances are just made for the fall time and for spooky season. This basically follows the story of a girl named Alex, and her mother flee their coven, and then Alex somehow, some way makes her way back. When she returns though, she finds that she fell super behind in all her studies and work, so Aiden offers to help her and kind of catch her up on everything, and in the middle of it all, a little romance kind of starts brewing, but we get a forbidden love trope in here because half-bloods are not allowed to be with purebloods. Next up we have The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This is another book I've talked so much about, mainly because it was on my August TBR, also my September TBR. I feel like it's probably going to follow me into October, but this is another really cutesy witchy read that is perfect for the fall time. It mainly revolves around potions and a little spell shop that's opened in the book. It's a lush cottagecore tale full of stolen spell books, unexpected friendships, sweet jams, and even sweeter love. Then we have Beautiful Villain by Rebecca Kenny. This is another book that I need to read. This is actually a Great Gatsby retelling, and it takes place in modern time, but there's magic involved, and I'm pretty sure we get a little sprinkle of vampires in here. We have Nightbane by Alex Astor. I already briefly kind of touched on this, but this is book 2. It comes right after Lightlark. I'm so excited to jump into this, especially with the way Lightlark kind of ends, and also my favorite character, our morally gray Nightshade. I just know we're gonna get a whole bunch of scenes with him. We have City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This is book 1 in the Mortal Instruments series, and I really want to read this book because I think I talked about this a few videos back, but I used to be obsessed with the movie a really long time ago when it came out. I was obsessed with Lily Collins. I picked this book up a little bit ago, and I'm really excited to dive into to this series because Cassandra Clare is an author I just hear incredible things about overall. Very excited. I also feel like this cover as a whole is radiating fall and cozy vibes. Next up, we have some cutie little hockey romances, of course, because it wouldn't be a fall TBR if I didn't have some hockey romances on here. So first up, we have Collide. This is a book I picked up randomly because I saw so many people that I trust with book recommendations love this book, so I decided to give it a shot. Summer wants to become a sports psychologist, and she basically is taking on this project that's requiring her to work with the hockey team, and the one sport that she tries to stay away from is hockey. And our MMC in this is Aiden. He's the captain of the hockey team or something like that. He gets caught up in a scandal. The coach makes him the forefront of Summer's project. They are forced to basically work together. Then we have Behind the Net and the Fake Out by Stephanie Archer. This is book 1 and 2 in the Vancouver Storm series. This is another series I have talked nonstop about, so I'm not going to chew your ear off too much about these books, but they're basically cutie little hockey romances. I was getting a lot of comments over on TikTok and Instagram on my little hockey videos saying that I have to read these books because the couple in book 2 reminds everyone of Chris and I. So naturally, I'm very nosy and want to read their story. I do hear really good things about this author and her sport romances in general, so I have very high hopes. Next, I have You Again by Kate Goldbach. This came out last year, I want to say, and I just never got around to it, but come on. This cover is literally fall. If fall was a book cover, this would be it. I'm pretty sure this is a cutie second chance romance, maybe an enemies to lovers romance. Either way, I'm probably going to eat it up. I've heard a lot of really good things, and I've seen a lot of things about this recently. So then we have Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This just came out this year. I'm very excited about this because I recently saw a video, I think on Instagram, and people were kind of saying that this reminds them of Danny Phantom. I'm sorry, I haven't thought about Danny Phantom since I was like in middle school. The title of the book, Phantasma, is actually the name of this creepy haunted manor, I think, and our main character is Ophelia. She basically is experiencing a bunch of crazy loss in her life. Something ends up happening to her sister and she's trying to save her, and in order to save her, she ends up asking help from a stranger. That's really all I know so far, but I am very excited about this book. I think it's going to be a really fun and different type of read. We have The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This book I also received last year, I think. This is just giving off all the magical witchy vibes. It's going to be perfect for spooky season. It's also a really itty bitty book, so it shouldn't take me too long to read. I feel like this is going to be a lot of fun. The cover alone has me so intrigued because we have all the books. Last but not least, we have Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This is a book I put on my fall TBR last second because I received a special edition from Darkly by Bookish Box. This cover is so fun. It's honestly everything right now. I think it is so cool. I know this is a romance. It's a romance between like really bad people though, I think. It also has a lot of really good reviews, and it takes place in Boston. That is the last book though of my fall TBR, which brings us to the end of today's video. That was a long one. Whenever I sit down to do book rec videos, they always end up being so drastically long, mainly because I am just the biggest yapper, which is crazy because in real life I am so quiet. I hope you're able to take away some fun new books from today's video, maybe put them on your fall TBR, your October TBR. If you do, definitely let me know which books you are taking away. Let me know if you saw any books in here that you've read already that you really enjoyed, or if you have any book recs for me to add to my fall TBR this year. With all that being said though, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet and stop yapping your ears off. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.